to esteemed panelists, speakers, and participant in this BITAS conference 2021. I also like to record my deep appreciation to the organizer for inviting me to speak in this virtual conference and put together this conference. With the theme Digital Enterprise Architecture Empowering Business Innovations. This is very timely with the pandemic that we are experiencing now globally, impact to the digital business services for all agencies and also government as well. So I've been tasked to talk about enterprise architect, but it's also important for me to talk in the perspective of CIOs in terms of their responsibility in the digital accelerations adoptions and what are expected of CIOs in this depressing era. Yeah? So usually when organizations need to transform, there are some missing clarity in terms of identifying the importance of prioritization in digital investment, especially in terms of which area or initiatives that they have to do first, or do they do it in parallel, and what are the impact to the consumers or the customer, whether the changes business model will be success, and in terms of transforming the business service and also the digital culture. So talking about challenges, what we can see in terms of heavy moving forward to be a CIO will be a very heavy task. Magnanimous task to ensure that the directions and the visions of digital transformation is realized, especially when the management lack vision in sharing the valuable business transformation and their ability to understand which business area is much more important. When we are talking about digitalization, definitely technological issues, we cannot run away from the technological issues, right? So when we are looking into the technological issues, usually CIO needs to understand whether the technology that being decided in the solutions will change the reliability of the applications. How do we move from legacy system and softwares to ensure that the success of the service delivery? Of course, in terms of connectivity, the network, the security, the coverage, and the speed of connectivity needs to be upgraded as well. To make sure that the realization of strategy success, adoption is one of the area that cannot be put on hold. Yeah? So in terms of adoptions, we have to look in both ways in terms of the users, which is our citizens, and also in terms of the developer, which is our employees. So both should have a very balance in terms of digital competency and skills. So by moving forward, CIO need to understand the whole spectrums of digital transformation for their own area or domain. When we are looking into the responsibilities of CIO in the strategic changes, we have to ensure that CIO will be able to keep the momentum going in terms of delivering the digital service of the transformations. Based on Gartner, 85% during this pandemic, the relationship between CIOs and the superiors, whether it's CEOs or top management of the government, strengthened. Why is this happening? It is because if we look into the changing of business working and working environment nowadays. They are using a digital platform as a medium to communicate, to connect to each other, and also to deliver services virtually. So, for example, like nowadays, we are looking into putting together a technology platform that can address the issues of e-commerce, address the issues of service delivery, in terms of end-to-end services and also security. For example, like some of the business leaders nowadays having a very difficult situation where they have to address not only giving the services without having on the ground works or face to face, but also delivering the workplace, digital workplace for the employee. So that's why the relationship between CIOs and the superiors and also the peers is very important to deliver the digital transformations. Leadership is one of the skills that needs in this area. And also in terms of fostering the cultural changes of adopting IT as a medium of workplace or a medium of communications. For example, like us today, we are having a virtual conference. So in terms of the culture of adopting using digital medium as a communication, become one of the area that impact us socially in terms of the time that we have spent together, especially when we are working from home with our family, with our spouses, and with our children. So if we consider CIO, or as Dr. Kwong mentioned just now, CDO, Chief Digital Officer, in fact in Malaysia now, by My Digital's framework that we are working on, we have changed in terms of the roles between CIO and also CDOs. We're looking also in terms of how CIO can give more influence in terms of continuity of services to the executives. As a CIO, they are responsible to communicate and influence in terms of which investment need to be expedited. So some of the, of course, we know that IT investment is not as small; it's a very big investment, right? Especially if in the government we are talking about hundreds and thousands of services. So when CIO become part of the executive management team, as shown by Gartner, they have a say in terms of how important some of the digital solutions to be delivered or executed at speed, so that they have the ability to step on the digital gas pedal, then the transformation and also the changes that the organization needs in the digital service can be materialized. So if we look in terms of the influence of the CIO, if the CIO have direct reporting to the superiors and also part of the management team, they have quite a good path to make sure that the business continuity. But at the same time, CIO also have to have a very good relationship between the financial department, operation, and also the public relations. So with that in mind, as a CIO, they need to have a strategy how to integrate between business and IT so that it work in tandem and together being implemented as one solution or one initiative. So the way that we handle strategy, currently there is still some percentage of silos when we are talking about changes. For example, like in the government, when we are talking about delivering digital license, driving license, yeah? So the importance here is not about the product that we give in terms of digital forms, but actually in terms of the governance, in terms of the policy, in terms of the procedure, so that we secure the data, personal data, in terms of sharing the information among different entities or different agencies, or the public or private. So by treating the solutions separately from business and digital or IT, it will cause quite a gap in terms of how we can derive from both benefits. So that's why more engagement in terms of the needs to change the way of the business model, the way that we do things, should be looked into from the perspective of business-wide or government-wide perspective. And when we design, we have to have a digital-first mindset or digital-first strategy, so that we are leveraging in terms of the digital technology first, when how we can change the digital business or the remote business models. And the way that we design also now, as of I think 2010, we actually designed the online transaction based on the request of the agency processes. But now the way that we should be designing our services is based on customers' needs or the customer experience. So when we are talking about customer experience, CIO have to understand how to get the behavioral insight, how to get the emotional or empathy design in the services. So that is another skills that I believe IT architect or business architect can help in terms of CIO. So that when we are giving a solution, holistic solutions, and building a new business capabilities, we are giving as a total solution as a whole. So when we are talking about customer engagement just now, or customer experience, based on Gartner, they says that channels is one of the areas that will be give a lot of impact in terms of digital service. So based on the channels, if we can, what are the channels that we can leverage on, so that our services will be adopted very much easier by the clients. So there are some ways that we can address in terms of the outreach to the urban areas or multiple geolocations. For example, leveraging on the mobile as a medium to give more outreach to the customers. Or maybe some of the design that we are using, whether it's portals or mobile apps, is much more easier for them to use by giving them self-service characteristics. Yeah. And of course, we can introduce new digital product and services, so that in terms of the interoperability or the seamless service being given from multiple agencies can be delivered as one. In the customers' engagement, to get this kind of understanding and insight from their preferences and also their needs and access to the internet, we have to do some kind of engagement to them, whether it is done in a mass approach or maybe in a focus group approach. So that are the 4 areas in terms of the customer engagement that we have to look into. As in Malaysia, we have one area of customer engagement or experience that we are designing in consolidated in one single gateway. By My Government Portal design, we are actually giving the information and transactional option for the customer or the citizen based on their life event. For example, like handling or managing your information, individual information, and also your family information, divorce, marriage, children's death, things like that. So we citizen or the customer will see the services as one. But at the back end of the services, there are multiple interoperability and integrations that need to be designed and architect so that the service delivered will be very easy and integrated. These are the areas that some of the services that been given in the My Government portal, educations, social security in terms of career path, health, in terms of taxes, finance, and leisure. Another customer experience that currently I think every citizen of Malaysia has experienced is My Sejahtera, which is using mobile. Currently, we have 27.7 million active users of My Sejahtera, which is being benefited in terms of the information COVID-19 and also vaccinations. Based on this, because of the pandemic that we have been experienced, this kind of innovation using mobile device has been put up very quickly so that we address the citizen concerns. So if you look into the down below, there are strategic collaboration between multiple agencies. So to have this kind of strategy and to architect a design on services that across multiple agencies, processes, data, applications, and also infrastructure needs to have a holistic approach of architecting. So how do CIOs between all these areas talk to each other? So by actually looking into the preferences of the customers, how much easier can we reach everyone that have data connectivity but don't have an internet connectivity? So we leverage both in terms of the technology and the characteristic of customer experience. To have all those, just now that we are talking about the portal, the mobile device, actually we have 26 years been leveraging on IT. Malaysia started in 1995 or 1996 during multimedia super corridor era, or that is actually the process automation when we are transforming administrative process and service delivery using the benefit of IT. But currently we are aligning the business and IT strategy towards transforming Malaysia into digitally driven or high income nation, leveraging on digital economy. So if we look into the journey of digitalization, we start off by actually automating our processes and delivering our information to the public at mass using digital or media ICT infrastructure. So we have been connecting infrastructure and consolidating infrastructure of agencies to ensure that the access of IT services and facilities and adoption is being embedded in their everyday life. So when we move to the collaborative government AG 2.0, we are looking into the different way of giving services by integrating the services as one. That is how we look into whole of a government approach to ensure the productivity and the government services improvement. So we have actually a different channels that we give services in terms of targeted group For example, G2E is for our employee, G2G for inter and intra-government connectivity, C for citizen, and B for business. We have mobile, we have call center, and also we have portal. So to achieve the citizen-centric government service and digital economy, we are now launching our digital strategy in 3 ways. At the national level, we have My Digital, which is looking into the digital agenda of the country, and also for IR strategy that actually looking into adopting the emerging technology and for IR technology in the digitalization. For the public sector, we have a digitalization strategic plan for implementation of 5 years. So by understanding this 4 target group of our customer, we are looking into significant initiatives that can help in terms of how the customer should be served. Currently, we have, for the government, we have 11,154 services, which is 57% of it is already end-to-end. By looking into the targeted group of customers, we are actually building the platform so that the information and the services and transactional services are seamless between agencies. Based on our experience, the consolidation of ICT infrastructure has reduced lots of operational costs, which is estimated about 890 million within 3 years. So enterprise architecture is one of the area that we are doing it from central and looking it as a consolidated effort. So how do enterprise architects play a role in this? What do enterprise architects? They are actually doing or managing architecture initiatives that led a business technology strategy. So in terms of CIO's role just now, since they are be the one that become the IT leaders and the trendsetters or the drivers to the changes of digitalizations, then there are areas that CIO need to be given assistance from enterprise architect. So one of the area is very clear digital destination or the direction, or in Bahasa we call it Halatuju. So EA giving you that kind of views or holistic views in terms of how we should move forward. And also it shows the capability and the digital ability to change. How do we build this kind of ability to ensure that the initiative should be delivered? By looking into the capability that we need, we understand the need to upskill the digital competency, and also in terms of what are the areas of governance that we should be looking into in terms of new governance, for example, like data strategy or data sharings, or in terms of data analytics, in terms of business, different business models, alternative IT spending and controls. So that kind of responsibility and accountability need to be distributed among players of the digital transformation. And this will bring about what kind of enterprise IT models that we can change to help expedite the digitalizations. Who are the enterprise architects? So as an enterprise architect team, we mentioned about 4 domains just now, Dr. Khan also mentioned about the same thing. So there are 4 domains of architect. So what are their roles? For business, definitely they have to understand both business and technology strategy to ensure the capability to be delivered well. And for information or data architect, they have to understand both way of the importance of security of the data, the sharing, where it should be stored, and how is technology, current technology of data analytics can help, right? Of course, application architect will look into comprehensive software and application strategy spans for the whole of government solutions. And technology architect definitely have to look into the needs of technology plus the emerging technology that we can leverage on and can use in terms of giving a different way of giving services. So how does this EA team helps CIO to make sure the success of the strategy? So they should be play a role as an internal management consultant. So the EA team and also the leaders should collaborate in terms of how do they design to ensure the implementation of the program, strategies, and also projects. So the first one, they have to engage every service and every governance. They need to engage the stakeholders so that they understand for different type of industry or different type of services given. There will be different governance models depending on how intensive if the data or the changes of the procedures and processes is going to be. So the engagement of stakeholders is one important way of making sure the critical success factor to actually get the buy-in from the beginning. And the second one is in terms of understanding the business and operating model, not only in terms of identifying the risks and opportunities, but also in terms of making sure that the domain area or the cluster of services that they are addressing is actually being looked into in depth in terms of a different type of risk based on their targeted group of customers. So the new business model, the new operating model should be addressed by this thing. Of course, just now, Dr. Pong also mentioned about the business outcome driven. As of now, when we are giving services, usually the way that we measure is how many customer or client is using our services. But when we are talking about outcome, you not only looking into the indicators of how many, but also in terms of the how does it impact to the users that we are. For example, we can have as many as millions of notebook being distributed to the students because they need to have an online learning from home. But what are the impacts of they are studying in an online environment? So that kind of outcome-based during the design and also the architecting of the solution should be embedded in. Definitely, as an internal management consultant, technical viability is a must so that the team can advise properly to the CIO whether the solution being given by the vendors or the principals or the service provider is actually meeting the needs of the architecture challenges. So with that, I end my presentation. Thank you. Back to you, Alicia.
Thank you, Dr. Is. I think this is a topic that close to heart of many. How architects can help CIO and also how to justify the value of CIO. And I can see there is a lot of questions there for you, Dr. Is. First one, I think, comes from Pro Wada, and she said that interesting. You mentioned that top management sometimes do not clearly convey their aspirations and target for the organization. In the government sector, this aspect to me is rampant because of the fluidity of government policies and directive. What would you suggest the different dimensions which we are much needed among the top management in the organization?
Okay, currently when we are looking into the competency of CIO or CDO as leaders in the organizations, each government services sectors. There are before this we are focusing on more towards project-based IT initiatives. But with the digitalization now and the way that they see it, how pandemic impact in terms of end-to-end services, now we are looking into how to make sure that every CDO or CIO are giving competency in terms of understanding the business, not only in terms of their own business area, but also how does the ecosystem of the business can help to identify and clearly define the directions of the changes or the transformation. Sometimes transformation prior to this is more on the technological transformation, which is towards application, with change of infrastructure, hardware, networking. But when we are looking into the digital device, for example, right now, and also in terms of fourth technology that embedded in terms of the seamless services, actually CDO or CIO needs to have the kind of understanding in terms of risk that they that will be impacted if they change in terms of the policy or in terms of their procedures that leveraging on the digital technology. So that is another way of how we are looking into changing the mindsets of the top management so that they understand more in terms of the risk and the impact of the digital benefits.
In fact, it's a very important role. And we also have a questions for Dr. Muhammad Noor Akmal, saying that IT leadership and top management, or in the case of technical leader, seems not to be inside on the same page at certain areas sometimes. For instance, ICT and digitization shift from manual labor work on the ground, like for example, hospital, office, always have been regarded as difficulties, and many reluctancy has been seen. How do you suggest we can advise the business-oriented mindset other than engagement that most of the time end up with disagreement?
Okay, if you are talking about the IT leaders, we are talking about the technology leaders, right? But when we are talking about the digital leaders, we are talking about the business strategy and combining of both business and IT. So in this area, when we are talking about digitalization shift, should be business-led, meaning to say that you must have some understanding that these changes will impact in terms of overall of the business, for example, like health, overall of how you're giving the health services rather than in terms of automating the processes only. Of course, automation will be embedded in terms of the transformation. That's how we should be looking into when we are talking about digital mindset or business-oriented mindset, because we are not talking to the technical people. We are not. If we are talking to doctors, for example, in the health, doctors understand their how the burdens of their works on the ground and how to impact the client of the health environment. But when we are talking about the people who actually come up with the strategy and also the policy on giving services in health area, we are talking to both the business and also in terms of the technical people. So from here, of course, engagement must be done, but prior to that, we have to give them some kind of step up of understanding. How does the business-oriented impacted in the digitalization? Because we have done this with Ministry of Health, actually two-pronged. We've done it prior to pandemic and also in the pandemic period. Prior to pandemic, the way that we are doing it, how do we change the architecture mindset to the management is looking into a traditional way of which is you look at your business as is and what are the gaps and transformations that need to be done. But when pandemic happened, they wanted be something fast. So at that time, the changes of mindset really actually looking into how do we address the needs of the citizen. Not they are not talking about how do we work on the ground anymore. Even though that is part and parcel of the changes that have to be followed, but they're looking into the outcome. So that is how we expect the IT leaders or the digital leaders will change the way that they design and they strategize the changes transformation of their services.